You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony.
Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're talking about some of those silly laws that people put together and asking just what were they thinking anyway. Not just HOAs, but even cities and states. But we want to talk even more about focusing a little bit as well on how do you develop good rules and regulations? How do you, as a board, actually take some time to review that periodically? We're going to talk about that a little bit, but we've got to go over just a couple more of
couple
these
more
just
stories,
ridiculous
okay.
ones here.
All right.
Which ones, Tony, shall we hit
Well,
here?
I'm interested in this one from Little Rock, Arkansas, because I think it illustrates a situation where one person had a burning issue.
Okay.
It's unlawful in Little Rock to honk a car horn at a sandwich shop after 9 p.m. Okay, this is Section 18-54. Sounding of horns at sandwich shops. No person shall sound the horn on a vehicle at any place where cold drinks and sandwiches are served after 9 p.m.
So you could be next door at the gas
I think
station.
this is where this originated.
And could honk.
Oh, I see. Yes.
So if you have the sandwich shop and then you also
The
have
gas
the
station.
gas station, at 9:01 you could just drive over to the gas station. You're golden.
Honk your horn.
But here, what do you think was?
Well, I think this was a neighbor of the sandwich shop who was sick and tired of being disturbed by horns honking after 9 p.m. What amuses me about this, too, and not only that you could pull over to the next lot and honk a horn, but you could honk your horn as much as you wanted up till 9 p.m., apparently. And I think this is something that maybe was not necessary. You know, if there's already noise ordinance, it seems to me there should be a broader ordinance about noise in general, don't you think?
Oh, you would think
Yeah.
that people would have taken the time to consider, is there something else already on the books? For example, like disturbing the peace.
There you go. Almost every city has a noise ordinance, too. After 10 p.m., you cannot make any noise that disturbs a neighbor.
This reminds me of the story. I remember a mother telling me this years ago. And she had her little 4-year-old boy was out of her sight for a moment. All of a sudden, she heard boom, crash, boom, crash, boom, crash. She goes into the other room, and there he was holding a hammer. And he was knocking out the glass on windows.
Oh, my God.
In the living room, one after another.
Oh, my
He thought
God.
this sounded cool. And the mother, said, What on earth would make you think that you could? Why are you doing this?
What possessed you?
What possessed you to do this? And the little boy said, "Well, you never told me I couldn't." and that was really, and it's funny and it's cute with a little kid.
Sure.
Because they don't have that kind of reasoning. What is unfortunate is that a lot of adults have grown up that way.
Oh, my God. And still act that
And
way.
that's why we have, that's one of the reasons I think we have some crazy laws, because someone says, well, you didn't say that. And you'll have some attorney arguing some position. Well, it says you can only, you can't honk
after 9 p.m.
After
But
9 p.m.
My client just was laying on his horn
until
from 8:50 to 8:59.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, there's no common sense,
Oh, yeah. That's another one of our favorite topics, isn't it? Where is the common sense?
One other honking one, and then let's get on to talking about what you can do to develop good rules.
Okay.
Honking is an issue, not only in Little Rock, but also Lawrence, Kansas. Did you know it's unlawful to enter the city of Lawrence, Kansas without honking your car horn?
Okay.
That is
so
true.
So in Lawrence, they want honking.
Yes.
Okay. Why would they want honking?
Well, everyone knows that's the city of sandwich shops. So,
And everyone goes there to honk their
it's a
horns
fast food haven, yeah.
at the sandwich shop.
no, again, we talked about there are reasons that go back that we don't understand now, but they made sense back
At
then.
the time, okay.
This law was written originally around the turn of the last century when the automobile was first starting. And a lot of people know that the sound of automobiles would spook horses, and people had runaway horses. People got into accidents. And so as a courtesy in Lawrence, they said, as you're entering the city, you give some beeps on the horn ahead of time, so it gives people an idea that
let people know
let
you're
people
coming.
know you're coming.
So you don't take them unawares.
Yes, and so it was a matter of courtesy.
There you go.
But again, now it doesn't make sense.
No.
But let's talk about that a little bit, shall we? About what do you do to develop effective rules for your HOA?
What do you advise, Gene? Where to start? Where do you start?
Well, there's a couple things that I think of. First of all, I think that it's always important for the association board to remember this is not a project to be done alone. They should, by all means, try to make every effort in including other homeowners in this process.
Yep.
Because, how many times do we hear people say, oh, that board is awful. That board, they just want to lord it over us, And you take away that argument when the board encourages other homeowners to say, we want you to participate on this committee to review our rules and regulations to see if they need to be amended and updated.
That's very smart. And in most associations, the president has the authority to form committees.
Yes.
He can name someone on the board or someone not on the board as a chairperson and put out that invitation, please come and participate and help us draft our rules and regs.
But
That's
what
a great idea.
And, of course, as we know, a lot of people aren't going to participate.
Sure.
They're not going to volunteer, and that's okay. But then that is also a little bit later then one of the ways that you can say, well, we gave you the opportunity to formulate and to guide what our rules are going to be.
But you
chose not to.
So too bad if you want to wash your mule on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that in Culpeper, Virginia.
That's right.
And you didn't voice your wishes.
Yeah. The other thing I think about, talk about how important it is to review your covenants and your bylaws before writing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I think that's a good place to start. If you're a new association or if you're reviewing your existing rules and regulations, you have to start with your governing documents because you cannot draft a rule that contradicts your governing documents. So articles of incorporation are at the top of the heap, then declaration of covenants and restrictions, then your bylaws, then your rules and regulations. That's the hierarchy of authority starting at the top. So your rules and regs have to comply with your governing documents. You cannot contradict them unless you go to the extent of taking the legal action necessary and the voting necessary to amend any of those documents above your rules and regs. So start there. Yeah. You might be surprised to find out that some of these things are already in your documents. Often you'll see something that says no for rent signs on the property. You'll see things like you have to have window treatments in your windows, not bedspreads or flags kind of thing.
Or signs,
Or signs in your windows. So start there.
Yeah, and the other thing, it's interesting when you take a look at the state statute, it over and over again will have the phrase, unless otherwise stated in your declaration.
That's right.
And then it'll go on and tell what that particular law is. So the state statute is even very aware of the fact that there may be certain prohibitions that are in the governing documents that will be supersede even the state statute.
That's
and what
right.
the preference is and how something should be
I'd have
handled.
to say so far Minnesota has been very careful not to trample all over homeowner associations' rights and abilities to govern themselves. I think they've been very thoughtful and careful about
yes,
that.
there is that. There has been that understanding that this is a group, a corporation, people who've gathered together, and they are being allowed to govern themselves. They're being allowed to form what is important to them.
And we're talking about issues that have to do with living with each other. We're not talking about the association having the right to build a casino in the middle of the green space or change major laws, but giving people the right to make some easy and simple, not easy maybe, but simple decisions for themselves.
Yeah. So if someone has considered their declaration to see that something isn't there, they've tried to get participation with others in the association, and they don't see anything contradicting a law or a rule that they want to put in. One of the next things that I think is important for that committee, for that board to think about, and that is the issue, is the action measurable? I mean, some laws are stated. How can you even begin to determine whether or not it is a violation? I'll give you an example, and that is someone says there will be no disruptive behavior. Well, what does disruptive behavior mean? Yeah. To one person, that could mean a few people laughing in a hallway as they're going down to their end unit to go in, and someone heard them, and they were bothered by that.
It's too vague. It's too subjective. I had a homeowners association of stacked condos, and at one place on the property there was 3. A ground floor, a second floor, and a third floor. The woman on the ground floor had lived there for 4 years, and no one had lived above her for that 4-year period of time, because the woman who had lived there for many, many years had to be put in a care facility. The family held on to the condo thinking that she might be able to move back. Well, she wasn't able to, so someone new bought the condo and moved in, and the woman below that condo just was having a horrible time dealing with the fact that she was hearing noises now from upstairs. And it was things like, well, they were watching the basketball game the other night, and they were hooting and hollering and screaming. And it was 8 o'clock in the evening. She called to complain about that. She called to complain because she could hear kids running across the floor during the day. She just was not used to having any kind of noise invade her space. So that was a situation where, sure, there's a rule, don't disrupt your neighbors, but is it reasonable in this situation?
Well, what it comes down to is some people's standards are just not going to be met. Some people will have expectations, and an association should only try to govern to what is the expectation of the majority. You can't do it to the extent of the expectation of every person.
Yeah.
That is an unrealistic thing that'll never happen.
That's right.
Another thing that I think is important as you're talking about rules and regulations, before writing a law, a rule, you need to ask yourself, is this a one-time occurrence, or is this something that happens frequently?
Okay, that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, because I've seen some cases where someone, they want to just draw up this big, involved rule, and it really isn't a big issue at all.
Sure. Or some weird circumstance. Brian in our office, the property manager, had a great story I heard a couple of years ago. In the wintertime, he had a family with some teenage boys. These teenage boys decided that it would be really fun to get up on the roof with their skis and ski down the long, sloping, snowy roof and jump and land in the yard. Well, that caused problems for the homeowners association.
As one would only imagine.
But I don't think they decided to draft a rule against skiing off the roof. Yeah. I think they probably had something in place that could apply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But after thinking about whether it's a one-time occurrence, you're writing it, and you have a draft, the board puts it together, to kind of finish up our segment here, I think it's important for the board to next take that draft, as did in our first story this morning.
Yeah.
They said, well, now we're going to give a copy to everybody living here,
Of
to
this
all the
new
members,
rule. Yep.
and get more feedback.
Yeah.
And so even though people couldn't participate, you're asking for feedback. And again, chances are few people will give you feedback,
Right.
either because they agree with it or others certainly haven't taken time. But after doing that and then getting to a point where you adopt it and put that in force, I think you can, any board that goes through that process can rest assured that when someone says, hey, you were unfair, you were trying to you were trying to take advantage of your position, they can stand very firmly and confidently know we gave you a number of opportunities.
That's right.
And you truly did try to get the input from every member in the association. Well, that's all we're going to talk about with rules and regulations now. But when we come back, we want to talk about a board that had a disagreement with one another on what happens to a property manager. Should he be fired or should he stay on? We'll talk more about that situation only here on Where You Live with Gene and Tony on AM 1280 The Patriot.